How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. I got a very exciting guest for you today. He is the voice of the Bethune Cookman Wildcats athletic program, Michael Truilo. Mike, it's been we've known each other for a good amount of time now, and we wanted to do this for a while, so I appreciate you finding time in your schedule to make this happen, man. So how are you?
I'm doing well. I mean, as well as I could be at the back end of crossover season here at Bethune Cookman. Basketball ending this week, baseball and softball in full swing. It's been hectic to say the least.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time, and you already leaned into it. This is like the busiest time of year for you right now. Crossover season is a great name for it, where basketball season is just coming to an end, baseball's getting in full swing, softball's going on. So, like, I think a great way to jump into this is, like, how do you manage your time, especially in this hectic part of the year?
My time management skills are very bad. I will self-admit that. Usually I am a project-based thinker. So but with basketball and football, it's really easy because like I have charts to do, I have pre-games to prepare, I have all that, and it needs to get done by the game. So like if we have a game on Thursday, it's like, okay, I have all this stuff to do, and it's gonna be done by Thursday. And I can do it in whatever time frame suits my other schedule and whatever else is going on, but it's got to be done. But that means a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings. Like this morning, I was up at 6 a.m. because that's the time I had 3 hours to kind of carve out to do prep for basketball tomorrow as we're recording this. It's just a lot of when you get time, you got to work and you got to lock in.
See, a lot of people, and you have way more experience with this than me, they think, oh, you work in sports, that's got to be fun. You just show up and do the thing. Like, well, you don't see, if a game is 3 hours, you don't see the 10 hours of prep that went into maybe that 3 hour game. So definitely, I could definitely see how that's the case. Michael and I met, I'm going to say like 5 years ago. I've never used this phrase before, but I think it fits here. When we were both cutting our teeth at the high school sports level, I was shooting huddle film for New Smyrna, and you were doing a audio play-by-play broadcast of was it Atlantic? Do I have that?
Yeah, so I started at Atlantic High School in Port Orange, little tiny Atlantic High School, and we'll get into my background in a little bit. But then I worked for Varsity Sports Network, which does not exist anymore, for a little while before being picked up by Bethune Cookman. So that's kind of my very abbreviated journey in local sports.
So when did you decide, like, was that always the goal to, like, I want to be a sports broadcaster? Was that like the lifetime goal, or did that come kind of later in maybe your high school or college life?
It didn't come till really late, actually. So my background and my family's background is in music and theater. My mom, professional musician, professional theatrical performer, has been for her entire life, continues to do so into her retirement, perform and direct off and on locally. And my brother's a professional jazz musician in New York City.
Oh, wow.
So that was my grandfather, violinist, conductor. So that was always kind of the path that was set before me, and I did it for a long time. High school and college, I did theater, I did music, I was in plays growing up, I was in children's theater, I was in semi-professional theater, and even in college, my first 3 years of college, I was a vocal performance major studying Renaissance opera because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And it turns out I still love performing and do it whenever I get, usually once or twice a year when I'm on off periods with sports. But it was the kind of grind that kind of burnt me out in college on that. So I eventually ended up changing my major in college. I ended up getting my major in audio engineering, which kept me close to the music program, allowed me to still take voice lessons, still be in choir and all that. But it shifted the focus away from being a professional performer to being someone who has other skills. Like we had to take music law, and we had to, my track was the audio engineering track. So we, learned how to do studio recording, live sound, all that. And that honestly has served me in my professional life way more than any of the music stuff has,
Right.
because I can tech my own broadcast. I can bring all my own gear, set it up, tear it down, produce the streams myself, which starting out in high school sports and of course, and early on at Bethune Cookman when they had no support system for that, that's kind of what I had to do. And I thank my background in audio engineering because it gave me the skills to pull that off.
I feel like there was a time for like broadcaster where they were considered like talent and they would just, show up and everything's, kind of ready for them to go. And now you kind of have to be like a one man production crew yourself. Sometimes you have help, sometimes you don't, but like you really do need the ability to like troubleshoot on the fly, set up, break down your own stuff. I don't know about your music background, but that is another reason that I think that we hit it off very well because you're talking to a former band kid as well. And I totally get the burnout you can get when like you're really passionate about something, but you do it like through school or through like an organized version. It like I don't want to say takes the fun out of it, but like over time it's very easy to get burned out on that. So I could definitely see how you make the jump. Were you ever a AP music theory guy in like high school or anything like that?
Yes, I took AP music theory in high school. Although, funnily enough, music theory is one of the things I struggled with when I got to college, especially like once we got into more higher level stuff. The people listening to this podcast do not want to hear me talk about music theory, but like post Renaissance, early classical era, when they started getting a lot of like key changes and relative major and minor modulations and all that stuff, I struggled with that, all the
Right.
theoretical stuff. I am a
I had
singer.
the
I don't deal
I had
with
the
that. There are
chance
notes
to
on the
do
page. I sing them.
right. I had the chance to do the AP stuff. Like I was a drummer, so I didn't know rhythms. I didn't have to know notes. So I'm like, that is
Hmm.
way out of my ball. Guys, we're gonna get to sports in a minute, I promise. But this is fascinating to me. So
This is the Phil Talks Music podcast. What
yeah,
are you talking about?
maybe I need to spin. I mean, you're talking to a third generation drummer here. So when people want to talk music, we're gonna talk music for at least a minute. So we mentioned getting involved in so like when you were in high school, you weren't really doing the sports part of it. That kind of came later on. You kind of doubled back to cover high school sports.
Well, I get the love of sports from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Big New York sports fan. Grew up in New York, born in New Jersey. I was born in Manhattan and
Okay.
lived in New Jersey for a little bit before moving down to Florida. So we would always have baseball on TV or the radio or football or whatever have you. When Orlando City got its professional team back in 2011, we were season ticket holders right away. My brother and I loved going to those games. We were season ticket holders for over a decade before I moved away, my brother moved away, and my parents were like, okay, we go to like 3 games a year. It's not worth keeping these.
Sure.
Um, and I still go every chance I get. I'll go to a couple games every summer, but that's where I got the love of sports from. And with my theatrical background, I always had a good control over my voice. So the first sports media thing I ever did was I was the public address announcer for the Seabreeze High School baseball team back
Awesome.
in about 2013, 2014 when I was a junior and senior. And I loved doing that. I didn't get paid or anything. I was a student. I showed up with the microphone, but it
Right.
allowed me to stay around baseball. And I played baseball and soccer growing up, super passionate about those games, which is why I'm sad that Bethune doesn't have soccer because I would be all over that.
Right. So I my first Orlando City game wasn't until their first MLS game, but in like the USL era for them, um, I would watch every game. They streamed them all. The streams weren't always great on YouTube, but like
Hmm.
I was always locked into them, and they were dominant in those early years in the Division 2 level, if you want to call it that. But yeah, same thing with me. My sister lived in Orlando, had season tickets. When she moved back closer to here, they're like, yeah, we can't hang on to the seasons anymore because we're only going like 3 or 4 times. So I feel your pain on that for sure.
The USL era of Orlando City to me is the golden age. I mean, I was a teenager, young teenager to start. We had season tickets until I was about 18, 19. Um, and that really is what sold me on the love of soccer. Because my best friend growing up played soccer, played all the way up through high school, thought about playing college, never really got there. But I never loved soccer the way I do now until we started going to those Orlando City games and I saw the passion and the pageantry around the game as a whole as something completely different to anything else in U.S. sports landscape.
Right.
That's what really sold me on it was the ruckus, the noise, the flags, all that stuff, and of course. Now, having coached soccer, played soccer, and now referee soccer, I love the tactics of the game as well. But it was the energy around it that really sold me.
Soccer is the one sport, like when we were really going to Orlando City games, I'd bring friends that either A, didn't watch soccer, and some of them didn't even watch sports in general, but they go to that atmosphere and they're like, hey, so when's the next one? When are we going to go again? Like, it did not take much, but no, I had a similar thing. My sister was a goalie all through high school. I'd go to her games and stuff. In this country where we don't have like a pro rail system, I felt like what captivated me about Orlando City, especially when they got to MLS, is like yes, it wasn't a true like relegation or promotion thing, but like they dominated the division underneath so well that it was almost like a natural promotion that I think is
Mhm.
really how it should be. And we've seen many versions of that with like a Cincinnati and stuff like that, but like it almost felt like a natural promotion. It's like this is how it should be. You should have to start at a lower level, and if you're front office and you can prove it on the field, then we move you to the next level. But other places just kind of buy a team, and next thing we know, there's another team in the league the next year.
Promotion and relegation is something that I'm very passionate about and can speak a lot about. I think
Mhm.
we're going to move on because I don't want to derail this whole show by talking about the flaws of the U.S. Soccer Association for 2 hours.
But I mean, I plan on having you on again. Spoiler alert now, so we will definitely keep that in the back pocket with the red and yellow cards for
Yeah,
when
I'm gonna
that
say
comes up.
you can see the Wayne Rooney jersey in the background.
Yes, I was going to comment on that. The name is cut off, but I had a feeling it was Rooney just off the
Yeah, and
font of
it's
the
it's
pen.
uh, it's game worn and signed. My dad
That's
bought it for me
incredible.
at an auction for Christmas one year.
That's awesome. So who's your So is that's a Man United, right?
I was a Man United fan for a while. I've kind of fallen off that bandwagon, specifically after Premier League went behind Peacock paywall. I don't
Yeah.
watch it nearly as much. If I have to pick a team in the Premier League, it's Everton. I really
Okay.
like Everton. It's kind of like the minnows holding on kind of story that I love. But Man United was the family's team when we
Hmm.
were my brother and I were really getting into soccer because they were on TV all the time, so we could watch them pretty much every weekend.
Right.
So and then my dad kind of got into it too, so we would watch them as a family. That's where the Man United thing kind of comes in.
I always struggled to pick a Premier League like my family's Italian. My grandpa was actually in the youth academy for AC Milan, so that's our team before he like came over here. So that was an easy pick. But for Premier League, like in the '90s, I liked Arsenal because they had Dreamcast on their jerseys, and I was a Sega kid, and I was like 9, so there was that. And then nowadays, I would say Man United because I don't know if you know this, you can actually buy stock in Man United. So I have like 4 stocks just so I can call myself a part owner. So that's
I do as
my
well.
Okay, so you already know. We're I'll see you at the next owners meeting then. So, but no, that's pretty cool. So, out of you sometimes for announcers, especially like at the college level, they might have a football guy, a baseball guy, a basketball guy. You do everything. So that's like a pretty wide net that you cast. Is the sports you enjoy watching the most the ones you enjoy calling the most, or is it a mixed match of what that would be?
That's a good question, and a question I don't really have a definitive answer to. The answer is yes, kind of, and
Mhm.
no, kind of.
So I'll rephrase
Um,
then. What is your favorite to call, and what is just the one that Okay, I'm gonna call this as well.
Okay, so there's one at the top of both, which is
Okay.
baseball. Baseball was the sport I grew up playing, grew up loving because of my dad, and I love calling it. I grew up listening to John Sterling on the radio every night for the Yankees, and yeah, I mean, if you've listened to me call any baseball, there's definitely some of that in there.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, baseball is my first true love when it comes to sports. Um, I would say the sport that I have grown to appreciate the most over my time as a sportscaster is basketball. I didn't really appreciate it. I enjoyed watching it growing up, but I didn't really appreciate the tactics and the physicality until I saw a high level of basketball up close and got to call it.
Yeah.
And it's honestly probably my favorite sport to call radio wise because it's got the fast pace like football, but you don't have to remember a million names. There's 10 people on the floor
That's true.
and you just get to go, 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 go. And it's a ton of fun.
My big beef with basketball, like when I worked a Stetson game, which I think you actually did PA the last Stetson game I worked, and we talked about this for a minute. Almost every game devolves into like fouls at the end. So like the fast pace that you're talking about is great, but they almost all come to a screeching halt at the end. I wish there was a way to get out of that. But no, the atmosphere of basketball is fun. I agree. Like working different sports, like there's something about baseball that's the most fun to work, I think. And like I was a later fan to baseball. I think really like working baseball, I got the bug like 3 years later, and like basketball is just falling off for me. I was a Magic fan growing up and all that stuff. So, do you have like, is it a different point of attack preparing for each type of sport, or have you found kind of a system that not one size fits all, but like a blanket coverage kind of thing?
Oh, 100%. It's different for everything. The two that are most similar are volleyball and basketball because the stats spread is similar. This roster sizes are similar, so I use the same chart for both. I always print on legal paper for basketball, and I
Mhm.
use one sheet for each team for basketball and volleyball. Football is a 100% different beast. Football is so many players, so many things to keep track of, so many storylines to keep track of. The games are long; it's 3+ hours. I'm on the radio, so I got to be entertaining the whole time. Um, I start Monday or Tuesday prepping for a Saturday or Friday football game.
Right.
And for that, for just the two deeps, I'll use 4 sheets of legal paper landscape, one for each side of the ball for each team. And I actually have it right here. I use these. These are legal sized manila envelopes, and
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll staple and tape them in to each side. So when like offense, defense, and then the other team has the ball, offense, defense, so I just have them right there.
That's smart.
Um, but I have that, and then I make a game day sheet with generic storylines for both teams and things I can go to in a dead moment. I can just look over and find a bullet point and keep talking. I have like a full stats printout for both teams, where they rank in each stat in the conference nationally. There's so much that goes into football to make that tick. And I've kind of come to resent it a little bit
Yeah.
because it's so much work, and then you are working for about 5 hours, and then all of it goes away, and you got to start over for the next week.
And it's almost worse the lower, like if you were to do a pro broadcast, those rosters are capped at 52, 54, whatever the magic number is. But then a college roster could be like 98 people. And like
Oh, God.
32 of those people won't even see the field, but you got to have some knowledge of them. So
Or
there's like,
shared numbers. Shared
yeah,
numbers are the bane of my existence. We had a
yeah.
game for BCU. We were in Houston at Texas Southern. Guy had a pick right in front of me. I looked down, I saw the number, and he gets the interception. And it was the different guy wearing the same number because it was the wrong side of the ball. I'm like, come on.
See, I don't think that's your fault. So my small version of that is we have like a Jackie Robinson day for the Tortugas, but it's 9 night because he wore 9 in the minors as opposed to 42. So we will have a game where everyone on our team wears 9, and it's early in the season. It's like April 16th, 15th, one of those. And so like I haven't gotten the roster down quite yet. So like when it comes to playing walk-up music and stuff, it's like, all right, number 9 again. I've only seen these roster for like a week already. So that's my version of that. But yeah, duplicate numbers is I get why they do. It's a necessity really in college football at this point. But like it can be really rough. Absolutely.
It doesn't need to be. You get 0, 00, and 1 to 99. Use them all. That's 101 numbers right there. You don't need
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah. And I want to get back to where like tight ends are wearing number 47, and your freshmen wide receivers that barely touch the field have to wear 98 as a
So
freshman.
that I
like
don't care about as much.
Yeah.
Because on my charts I group by position group and then depth chart number, so it's easy. It doesn't really matter. But duplicate numbers, just I hate. Get them out.
While we're on numbers, do you like the semi still new thing in the NFL where like skill guys can wear single digits now? Like
Yeah,
kind of like
anybody can
Hollywood?
wear any number. I don't care if
Yeah.
it's a superstition thing. Let them wear any number. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just no duplicates. That's my thing.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree necessarily. There's a few guys that it's like, yeah, I don't know what they would have wear. Like you're used to them wearing it, and like for me, like someone that collects like game worn jerseys, even from like UCF, a number 5 will come up, and I'm like, all right, is this the player that I want, or was this like the guy on defense that barely played? And you have to like do the research and see on like what size they were or whatnot. So on top of all the Cookman stuff you've been doing, we already mentioned this is your like busiest time of year. You added on top of that plate this year doing the state championships for soccer in high school out in DeLand. What was that experience like?
Well, actually, I've been doing that longer than anything. This was
Oh,
year
wow. Okay.
6 for me doing the FHSAA state championships on their public address out in DeLand at Stetson. Yeah, that's a great event. And I mentioned I love soccer. It's like the only soccer thing I get to do all year. It's a
Right.
great time. We had Tiger Woods out there this year because his daughter was playing for Benjamin. They won the state title in 3A. But yeah, that's always a great time, and I love doing that. And it also gives me a chance to connect with the referees that I've worked with, doing local rec games and local club games because the local referee association, EFRA, staffs the event and provides the clock operators and provides the officials, and so I get to see all my refereeing friends for a week, and that's always fun.
Do you do any sort of officiating anymore? Or have you pretty much moved on to the broadcast side?
I've pretty much moved on. Every time I see Sam, who's the leader of EFRA, he's like, we need people. Come on back. I've still got all the uniforms in my closet, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But this year, I let my badge lapse. I would have to reapply, take the test again, and it's like a whole 10-hour process to do that, which I'm not sure I have time to do.
Sure. While we're talking high school sports, I got to hijack the whole show for 2 minutes. A little bit of breaking news. We're recording this on Friday night. New Smyrna Beach women's basketball team has won the 5A state championship as of 10 minutes ago. So congrats to the ladies. Congrats to Aisha Patrick, the head coach, who's also a former UCF basketball player. So go Knights. That's what you need to get some wins, is to have a Knight be your head coach. So great stuff for them. I've been following that journey, and I just saw on Twitter that they pulled it off. So congrats.
2 straight years with a Volusia County state champion. Mainland did it last year, and now New Smyrna's got it this year.
Yeah, usually when it comes to this area, when you're talking state, you're only talking mainland. So I'm glad New Smyrna for other sports. So I'm glad to see New Smyrna getting thrown in there. I know the wrestling team's doing great. They just won districts and a bunch of other stuff. So prior to even probably the soccer thing, prior to the high school thing, you are pretty pivotal in the start of the Simulation Football League, which I've always been fascinated by, how that all started and everything. I don't expect you to summarize the whole history of the league or anything, but how did you get involved with that? And just in a sentence or two, what is that for people that don't know?
So that's the genesis of the whole sportscasting thing for me. That's where it started. In 2017, 2016, I don't remember at this point, somewhere around there. I was a sophomore, junior in college. And I had just changed my major to music industry. And one of the requirements for the music industry major was you had to do a summer internship with somebody in the music industry and get a certain amount of hours. This leads back to sports. I'll get there.
Right.
So I went to a local radio station here in Daytona Beach when I was home for the summer, and they were like, nope, we got nothing for you. Go away. And I was sitting in my car in the parking lot feeling kind of depressed because I'm like, well, how am I going to get these credits now? And I scroll through YouTube just on my phone in the car, and I come across the Season 8 championship game for the Simulation Football League. And I go, what in the world is this? Because I love not just sports, but sports video games.
Of course.
Their representation of the sport. I love the sport. I was playing MLB The Show earlier today. The other thing you don't need to know about me in sports games is I'm really bad at them. I can't play PvP in anything. I just get wrecked, especially Madden. Can't do it. So I would do the whole GM thing.
Right.
I love let the computer play itself. I'll make the coaching decisions. I'll make the managing decisions. I like doing rebuilds, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And what I would do when I was a kid is I'd do that, let the computer play itself, and pretend I was John Sterling or Marv Alberts or Bob Costas and call the games in my bedroom or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And so I click on the Simulation Football League. And I'm like, what is this? And they're using, at the time, All Pro Football 2008.
I was going to ask you that, not to cut you off, but I was curious because I look at them like, is this NFL 2K5? Is this All Pro? Because the graphics are very distinguishable if you have the history of. So, okay, so that was going to be one of my questions. So
we're using 2K5 now.
Okay.
Back then, they were using All Pro Football 2K8. We made the switch because of back-end limitations with roster files and play calling. The playbooks weren't as big as 2K5. That's why we made the switch. But back then, it was All Pro Football 2K8. And I'm listening, and doing the commentary is someone who had become one of my best friends. His name's Cameron Irvine. He's the commissioner of the Simulation Football League. And he's doing the commentary for the Season 8 championship game. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not the commentary that's in the game. He's actually doing this. He's doing, in real life, what I've spent hundreds of hours in my bedroom doing.
Yep.
And so I sit there for a couple minutes, watch it on my phone, turn it off, think nothing of it, drive home. Couple weeks later, it gets recommended to me again on YouTube. And it's like a preseason game for the next season. And I'm listening, and it's the same guy, Cameron Irvine, doing the broadcast again. And he mentions that they're looking to expand the broadcast team, which at that point, I think was 5 people. And so me had never done any sort of play-by-play, had never done any sort of anything like that, except to myself in my head, being summer, nothing to do, depressed that I didn't get this internship, and I have really nothing to do, said, why the hell not? And shot him an email saying, listen, I've got no experience, but I love sports, and I'd love to give it a shot. And he said, yes. Why? I'll never know. But I'm sitting here in this position today thanks to that yes. So
well, I imagine that's how those first 5 people started too. So
probably,
it's at some point you got to give some guy a shot.
Mm-hmm. So he gave me a shot. He gave me a tryout on a preseason game, on a program called Rabbit.tv, which I don't think exists anymore. It was a way for a group of people to all watch a YouTube video simultaneously back in about 2017. And it allowed you to like take the stage or whatever, so you could do commentary that way.
Similar to
so
this,
that was,
I guess. Similar to
yeah, I guess a little
now.
bit. A little bit, but it was more of like an open forum. Like it was a like YouTube, but you could like join a live stream or whatever. It was weird. So that's how I got my start, and I was bad. Do not let anybody lie to you. When I first started, you can go up and look those games up from 2017. I was bad. They still exist if you want to find them. But I caught the bug. That's the term we use. I was hooked. And I did it as a hobby, calling a couple of SFL games every week for years, for 3, 4, 5 years, all through college. And I speak a lot more about this, not to self-plug, but on YouTube, I got inducted into the Simulation Football League Hall of Fame 2 years ago.
That's awesome.
In my Hall of Fame induction speech, I go into this a little bit more in detail if you want to find that. But being a broadcaster for the SFL and being involved in general got me through a lot of tough stuff in my life. And it was always something that was there that I could do every week. I put the headset on or turn the microphone on, because all I had at that point was like a music recording microphone, and just shut the world out and be someone else for a while. And that was enough for me. And so that's the Simulation Football League, and that's how I found it. So a broader answer to your question of what the SFL is it is an AI versus AI simulation league that currently uses ESPN NFL Football 2005. And how it works is there are teams. My team is the Carolina Skyhawks. I'm on their team staff. I do a lot of graphic design for them. So there's 30 teams. I think we're down to 28 teams now. Every week, you submit a playbook that you would like the AI to run, and it matches up against the other team's playbook. And the great thing about the SFL is you let go. Once you submit your playbook, there's nothing you can do. There's no buttons you can press. There's no timeouts you can call. You are at the whims of the AI and your playbook against the opponent's playbook. And football magic happens. There have been so many great games, close games, championship winning moments, all AI generated through this video game that hundreds and hundreds of people that are involved in this tune into every week and love passionately just as much as I do. And it is a great thing. I love it so much.
I think one thing that helps, and again, I've looked at it even before I knew you. I have come across it before. It helps that you're using one of the best, still to this day, one of the best football games of all time. I think that has a big thing to do with it. But like, I have a semi-similar, like my first content ever put on YouTube that I was connected to was someone that's become one of the best friends of mine. Nick Rice started the Dream Season Football League, which is he gets the all-time rosters of each team, and we simulate through a season. This year he's using Madden 12, I believe. So same thing. Like, I had no experience. I'm gonna, I have a voice. I'm told I have a face for radio, so let's just do it this way instead. And he's on season 9 of and it's 90% his legwork, but I've called games for him and stuff. So it's really cool how that community can come together for something like that. So, and you already said that was the catalyst to like everything else that's happened. So is it are you just the caller for your Carolina team, or how does that work?
Actually, no, I don't call any Carolina games.
Okay.
Every broadcast is neutral. There's no hometown broadcast or anything like that.
Gotcha.
And the broadcast director, Mike Daggs, does a great job of scheduling everybody so they don't call the team that they're affiliated with. So there's no bias in that sense. But no, I have a player. The other thing about the SFL is it's not just the coaches and staff submitting playbooks and stuff. You can have players. You have skill progressions. You can like progress your attributes throughout the season and get better as a player. I have a cornerback on Carolina.
Is it you, or you made up a name for somebody?
I'm made up a name. It's a combination of my grandfather's name on my mother's side and my grandfather's name on my dad's side. So
Nice. Cool.
yeah. But yeah, so there's ways to interact with it that way. You could just be a player if you don't want to be involved on the coaching side. You can be a broadcaster. You can write articles for the website. There's so many things to do in the SFL, and it's a great teaching tool if you want to get involved with sports media, because you have to do all the things that sports media needs to do. You need to create content. You need to keep up with stats and schedules. You need to do all those other things. And that was a great teaching tool for when I eventually got into the real world and started doing this, where I already kind of had some of those soft skills without knowing it because I'd used them for the SFL for all those years.
So the website for this is simfl.net for the people that want to check out the league and everything they got going on. If I'd asked you this question prior, I would have added a Hall of Fame broadcaster in your intro. So that's my bad. I'll be sure to do that moving forward. But no, that's incredible. I mean, just what people can do. And I'm sure the people involved in this, much like yourself, like all over the country, maybe all over the world, and the fact that they can come together to make this league. And this isn't like, I feel like people attempt small versions of this all the time, and the same way people start a podcast, do 3 episodes, and never upload again. This has been going for what? It's got to be over a decade at this point, right?
Yeah, we're on season 24 with 2 seasons per year. So, yeah, and I mean, it is Cameron Irvine's full-time job to be the commissioner of this league, because I will tell you up front, if you want to jump into this, it is a paid thing. You got to pay to have a player.
Sure.
You can just join the Discord community and be a fan without having a player. But if you want a player, if you want to be part of a team, it is a paywall thing. So that is his job, to run the league. And there's another one that's now out called the UFL. That's YOUFL, which is less player involvement and more of like, you're a fan of this team. There's actually a Daytona Beach team in that league called the Florida Sharks. So I'm now heavily invested in that too.
Nice.
But that's a different thing. But Cam also does that, and it's kind of a little offshoot of the same concept. But the SFL is the more involved. I explain it to people like this. You have fantasy football, but what if you were in the fantasy football? It was your player. It was your team. You were more emotionally attached to it. That's how I think of it.
Is there a Florida team in the SFL currently, or no?
There is. It's the Florida Storm. They're Miami based, so
Gotcha. Yeah, that counts, but it doesn't. Yeah, Florida is the same. So that's where you got your start. That's where you got your start. Let's talk about where you are now with Cookman. How did that journey start for you?
So, actually, the other catalyst besides the SFL for me to get involved in this was COVID. I left school. I went to James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Changed majors, spent 5 years up there. I left in fall 2019 and moved back here. I moved back in with my parents. And I'm like, okay, I'll be here for like 6 months, find something and move on. Because at that point, I wanted a job in the music industry as either a live sound producer or a studio session guy. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll move to Orlando and try and find work over there. And then COVID happened and everything stopped. And because everything stopped, it gave me a lot of time to sit and think about what I wanted with my life. And what I realized I wanted to do more than anything else was keep calling games. Because again, the SFL kept going through the pandemic because it was all virtual. And I mentioned getting it through hard times. That's one of them. But I realized going into the fall of that year was the FHSAA was going to try and play football. And I thought, well, this might be the perfect opportunity to get in and try it. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. Just try it. So I sent a cold call email to every high school in Volusia County, Flagler County, Seminole County, and even some of Brevard County, saying, I want to set up an internet radio stream for your school. I will do it for free. I have all the tech. I have all the expertise. All I need is a spot in the press box, access to power and internet, and I'll do the rest. I heard back from three schools even got back to me out of the
Which is
100
insane
or so.
when you think about it. Like how you didn't have 22 yeses and then you had to pick where you like. I don't get some schools. With
I got
like
one no, and I won't say what school that was because I don't want to throw them under the bus. I got one maybe. That was Seabreeze High School.
Okay.
And one yes. And that one yes was from Tron Griffin at a little tiny Atlantic High School in Port Orange. And he said, sure, I'll give this guy a shot. Why the heck not? We're not going to pay him anything. Why not? And so I got in with Atlantic. And I was the voice of the Sharks for almost 2.5 years. I did football. Yes, that's where I started. But it was also where I branched out and did basketball for the first time. It's where I did volleyball for the first time. Where I did baseball and softball for the first time. And that really laid the groundwork for what I'm doing now with Bethune Cookman, where I do everything because I have experience with everything from Atlantic and also from Varsity Sports Network, which I got into kind of around the same time, a little bit later than that. I don't remember how exactly I got in touch with the people running that, but I called mostly football, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of volleyball, a little bit of baseball for them for about 1.5 years before they shut down. And that was the high school experience. I wasn't getting paid from Atlantic. I was making $50 a game for VSN. And at the same time, working for the Little Theater of New Smyrna Beach as their live sound engineer and Foley work doing sound effects and stuff. And I love that because it connected me to theater, connected me to my youth. I love theater. As I said early in the episode, like I still try and get a chance to act and perform when I can. So that was fun. And now the way I got in with Bethune Cookman, which I'm assuming is your next question.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Is I sent another cold call email to the Gazelle Group because I saw them advertise the Sunshine Slam. It was the first ever year that they were doing the Sunshine Slam. This was 2021. And at this point, I was 2 years in almost it was November 2021. So almost 2 years into the whole high school sports thing. And I said, listen, I know I'm nobody, but I do public address. I do play-by-play. I can do media content or whatever for you if you need somebody. Shockingly, the Gazelle Group got back to me and said, sure, we need a PA guy. Come on down.
Nice.
So that's how I got in with not only the Gazelle Group, but also all the other stuff I do at the Ocean Center because I'm the first call PA for all the stuff at the Ocean Center they do basketball, therefore. The first ever event I worked there, the 2021 Sunshine Slam. Guess what? First game, first day. Air Force against Bethune Cookman, men's basketball.
Ooh.
And I get to talking in the green room with, at that point, Assistant Sports Information Director, Bryce Wojnowski. Remember, this is... Shout out, Bryce. Remember, this is around Thanksgiving of 2021. And I ended up handing him my business card at the end of the weekend saying, hey, I'm local if you ever need anybody. I didn't think anything was going to come of that. Like, less so than all the high school stuff. Like, this is a D1 college? Nah, they don't want anything to do with me. What would I do? 3 weeks later, I get a call from now head of sports information and really the only person in the office, Bryce Wojnowski,
Right.
saying, "Hey, the play-by-play guy we had left to take a job in Virginia. Can you fill in for a couple basketball games till we find somebody else?" And that was the start. The first game I did for Bethune Cookman was Bethune Cookman women's basketball against Florida International, December 19th, 2021. It's my first game. And I've done pretty much everything for them ever since. And, almost 5 years later, they haven't fired me yet, or they haven't found somebody permanent yet. So I guess we got a game tomorrow night. So I guess I'm still filling in. So that's the whole story with Bethune Cookman.
So the other thing I noticed with a lot of your work, and like I've seen you more lately than previous, because I've been filling in for PA at times, which has been a fun adventure to jump out on. But like, not only do you do every sport, but a lot of the time it's a one man thing. Like sometimes we already shout out Bryce, hopefully future guest of this show. We'll jump in there with you. Sometimes Kenny, who has been a guest on this show, will jump in there. But a lot of times it's just you. And I don't think people realize how tough that can be. Like, I don't even do a solo podcast more than once in a blue moon. If I'm really feeling confident, I'll come on here and do 20, 25 minutes and that's it. Or an episode with a guest will go an hour plus at times. So I don't even do a solo podcast. You do a 3-hour solo broadcast weekly. So I don't think people understand how difficult that can be.
So it was more true early on because, as I mentioned, Bryce was the only person in the sports information office back when I started. And the whole thing with BCU, it wasn't immediate, like, oh, let's give him the keys to the kingdom immediately.
Sure.
I ramped up. So the first year I did like some basketball games. And then the next year I did all the basketball games. And then at the end of the year, he's like, hey, we want to put the not the Celebration Bowl. Oh God, brain, help me.
The Florida Classic?
Florida Classic, FAMU versus BCU. We want to put that football game on the radio. Can you be there in 2 days? So that was an adventure. My first ever college football broadcast was on 2 days' notice for the biggest game of the year.
Yeah.
And also, there's another story about that game, which is they had someone lined up to do color, and he just didn't show up. Show up. Couldn't find him. No idea. Shout out to Chris Shaw, who works for Bethune Cookman, for jumping in literally last minute so I didn't have to talk to myself for 3 hours on a football team that I hadn't covered at all.
Wow.
But those early years, yeah, I was mostly by myself for basketball and then eventually baseball. I've never done a football broadcast solo, thank God.
Yeah.
But recently, the last 2 years, now that the sports information staff at BCU has been built up, there's now 4 or 5 people in that office, and we're really pushing the Cat Eye Network side of things, which is the student-driven thing. And this season, specifically for basketball, was the first year that outside of me being the voice and Bryce kind of overseeing everything, the entirety of the broadcast is student-driven. We got students producing, we got students on the camera, we got students on the replay, and I've had students the last 2 years on color with me for basketball and baseball. But Bryce still does baseball because he loves that. Sure. So we try to involve the students in any way we can. But yeah, so I've done a lot less solo broadcasting than I used to. But yeah, at the start, it was just me. I would roll up with my with my laptop with OBS because that's how we used to push it to YouTube, and my mixer and a headset and my notebook, and that was it. And that's all I had. So yeah, I have a lot of experience talking to myself.
Not that you did it just then, but I will take no OBS slander because that thing will do everything you want it to.
I love OBS. It's great.
Yeah,
I do some streaming on Twitch, and I love OBS.
I'm using it to shoot pro wrestling events in DeLand lately. Shout out PWR, and it's like the perfect thing for what we need. So yeah, it works out good for that. So we could do this for another 45 minutes, but Michael actually has a simulation football league game to call later on tonight, so I don't want to keep him for too long. So I'm going to throw a few more lightning rounds at you and then get you out of here. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. So you mentioned your New York roots, then you moved here. Just quickly, what are all your favorite sports teams? Just so everyone gets like your sports personality.
All right. I mentioned the Yankees for baseball. And that's mostly because I listened to John Sterling growing up, and he's a big influence of mine. The other team I like for baseball, funnily enough, is the Giants. And the main reason at that is John Miller.
Mm-hmm.
I'd listen to the Yankees games in the early evening, and then I'd fall asleep listening to John Miller on the West Coast doing the Giants games. And also, I loved Barry Bonds growing up. He was my favorite player. So that's why the Giants. So that's baseball. Basketball, Miami Heat. And I'm not a LeBron bandwagoner. I was a fan of the Heat back in the Shaq days when they won that first championship back in 2002. That's like where my Heat fandom started. So that Miami Heat for basketball. Soccer, we already talked about ad nauseum about Orlando City. A little bit of Everton, but mostly Orlando City. Hockey, New York Rangers. Football, New York Giants. It's mostly New York teams.
Thanks again for Barkley, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I see the Eagles banner behind you there.
So I'm redoing
this whole subject.
I'm redoing this whole thing, but for now, I needed something to put behind me. So this isn't just for you. This is staying for a while.
Yeah. Are there any things I've missed?
You said baseball, basketball. No, I guess that's mostly. Oh, so for college, is JMU just your school? Is that who you have interest in?
Yeah, JMU's my school. I'll also root for Florida, UF, because that's who I grew up rooting for. My best friend growing up, big Gators fan, went there, just graduated with his master's from there. His dad is a football booster, so we went to a lot of football games growing up. So I learned to love football at the Swamp, which is actually really cool. So yeah, that's college. It's JMU first, Florida second, and of course Bethune Cookman when I'm working for them.
So I didn't plan on asking this, but this has been coming up a lot lately. Where do you stand on people having quote unquote second teams? Because some people that like it's sacrilegious, other people don't care. Where are you on that with that?
I don't care. Root for who you want.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have second teams in a lot of sports. Like baseball's the one exception where I have the Yankees and the Giants, and they don't really butt heads that much because they're AL and NL and also on opposite coasts. So it doesn't.
I mean, if I have a second team, the gap could not be like, it's the Phillies, and then because I technically work for the Reds, I feel like my favorite team and then just a team that I also follow. Like before I got to college, I was a Penn State guy. I just enjoyed watching them, and then I got to college and was like, okay, UCF is my school because I go here. But my first college football game ever was a Penn State bowl game here in Orlando. So it's to me, there's always a massive gap if you are going to have the second team.
College is the one exception, I think, for me. I went to JMU, so I'll root for them.
Yeah.
I love UF because I'll root for them. I work for Bethune Cookman, so I'll root for them when I'm not calling their games. Mm-hmm. And, even when I am calling their games. But that's a topic for a different time.
Sure.
But I think pro sports, it's a little more taboo, quote unquote. Yeah. But again, I don't care who you root for.
Yeah, because there's even people like you talk Yankees and Mets, like it's usually pretty like decisive who you like, and then there's people that are like, they're both New York teams, so they'll I think it's when you wear the gear of both that gets a little risky, but
yeah. So I gotta bring up because you mentioned the Mets. It's funny. I love all these New York teams, and I get it from my dad. My dad's a fan of the opposite New York teams. So I'm Yankees, he's Mets. I'm Rangers, he's Islanders. I'm Giants, he's Jets.
So my entire family, I was born here. My entire family's from Long Island, so it's some combination of those as well. So I kind of get where you're coming from. That it could happen that way, but there tends to be groupings together. Like Yankees, Giants, Jets, Mets is very common. Mm-hmm. When you start breaking up the groupings, it gets a little strange, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But like a friend of mine, his dad is the rare. Yankees, Jets, and I think that's a very odd combination.
Yeah, you don't see that a lot.
No. All right, so on our way out here, because again, he's got a game to call here in a little bit, but again, man, I appreciate your time. I'm glad we finally got to do this. I look forward to doing it again. What is your future goals, either at Cookman or just as a broadcaster, and what advice? What did you wish you know now when you were starting? You can answer that in any. Well, I feel like it could be the same answer, but
okay. So career goals. I guess the big one is like be financially independent, which I'm currently not. I mean, working for Bethune is great. I'm close. I'm very, very close, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm still relying on the kindness of my family who have let me chase this, and they've seen the vision and they've let me go for it. But my career aspirations, I guess, I would like to be the A1 radio at a big school, I guess. So like a UF, a UCF, someone like that,
Hmm.
to do football, men's basketball, baseball at one of those schools. That would be like career endpoint.
Hmm.
I don't really think I want to do professional sports because I like the versatility that college demands. And you touched on it a little bit where like I do everything.
Yeah.
And thank goodness Bethune Cookman doesn't have like lacrosse. We don't have soccer. We don't have beach volleyball, which would
Right.
make things endlessly more complicated. We only have 15 teams, and I only really usually interact with about 8 of them.
Hmm.
But I love getting to do all those different sports. I love the calendar that goes, volleyball and football, then men's and women's basketball, then baseball, softball, and then you get a break and then it starts over again. I love uh, diving into different things. I'm always pigeonholed into like, oh, you're the baseball guy and you work
Right.
for the baseball team. I think it would get old after a while, and I think the diversity keeps me on my toes and keeps me striving to be better at all these different things. And advice to my former self, I mean, I've taken all of it. Is kind of funny because if 10-year-old me could see where I am now, he'd go like, "Oh, that's cool. You're doing the thing." Um, I would say just jump at every opportunity. Be an advocate for yourself because that's what I've had to be. And at every turn, I've had to be an advocate for myself in getting involved with the SFL, getting involved with high school, at BCU, getting my foot in the door, yes, but then convincing them to let me do more and more and more. And even this year, like we're doing more every year. We started the official BCU podcast, which is Hail Wildcats Radio, if you want to go check it out.
Check it out.
So it's always about finding that next step and about, well, what can we do better? What can we do more of? And I mean, next year I want to make the production value on our broadcasts better. And of course, there's always every broadcast you learn something new. Take
Right.
something away from it. Always try and better yourself every time. And something that I've found infuriating a lot of times, but has served me very well throughout my, I guess you can call it a career now, is I listen back in full to almost every broadcast I do. And I have right here, I have the notebook with all of my self-critiques, and it's at my desk. And so when I find an hour or so of time, go to the last broadcast, hit play, start critiquing. And that's how you get better. That's how you strive, and that's how you get better.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. The best way to improve is just to look at it that way. I totally get what you mean about like maybe if you were just their baseball guy, you maybe have aspirations to do pro baseball, but it would be difficult, I would think, to go from the guy that does 3 to 8 sports a year to just have to tunnel vision back to one. I could see how that would be difficult for sure. But aside from that, man, I appreciate your time again. He's an announcer, he's a singer, he's a jazz musician, and he's been a friend to me for a lot of years now. So I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next Sunday when I do PA again. So I'll see you out at the Jack.
I don't
Oh, you're
think
not
I'll
there?
be there.
Oh,
I
no.
think we might be still in Atlanta at SWAC basketball, so we'll
Oh,
see.
that's true. All right, so we'll
Well, because
try to make it through that game.
unless both teams lose really early and we're out. But yeah, thanks for having me on. We've been trying to get this podcast together for a while. I always enjoy sharing my story, and we got off on a couple of tangents, but that's how these things go. And I'm sure next time we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about because there's a lot going on in the sports world, and we both have opinions about it. So
definitely, that'll be the more traditional style next time. But I'm glad you got to tell your story here. Simulation Football League, check it out. Bethune Cookman, Hail Wildcats podcast, check it out. Follow Bethune Cookman Sports, and just you get to see more of Michael's work. Next time you see Bryce, though, tell him I'm coming for him next so he can be a guest on here as well.
Well, I'm seeing him tomorrow night because we've got basketball, so I'll let him know.
Perfect. All right, that's it for us today, guys. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care.